They illegally installed security cameras on my property, so I installed a high-powered air horn system just for them. Yeah, this war got loud. And trust me, you're not going to believe how far it went. In today's wild HOA saga, I'll walk you through exactly how I caught them spying, the insane counter system I built, and how this whole thing blew up into a neighborhood-wide scandal. There's petty revenge, drones, secret HOA meetings, viral justice, and yes, the great honkening. Stick around till the end, because it just keeps getting crazier. By the way, thank you for your comments. Seriously, I read everyone, and it means a lot. If you want to support what we're doing here, hit that like button and subscribe. It takes less than a second. It really helps the channel grow and motivates me to bring you even more amazing stories. Now, let's dive into the crucial details of this insane HOA showdown. The first time I saw the blinking red light on the oak tree behind my workshop, I thought it was just a reflection. Maybe the sun catching some bird feeder, or maybe my motion light glitching. I didn't think much of it until it blinked again. Exactly. Repeatedly. With the cold, mechanical rhythm of something that didn't belong. I stepped out onto my gravel path, crunching across the leaves. It was 6:12 p.m. The sun was just dropping behind the tree line, and the woods on my property, about 3.5 acres that backed up into the HOA greenbelt, were silent. Eerily so. I ducked beneath the tree's thick branches and found it. A brand new black bullet camera, mounted directly onto my tree. Wires sloppily zip-tied down the side of the trunk, leading toward the back fence line where the HOA surveillance initiative supposedly ended. I stared at the camera for a long moment. Then I took out my phone and snapped a photo. They really did it. The HOA had crossed the line. Again. 2 months earlier, the HOA had announced a neighborhood security upgrade. It sounded simple enough at the meeting. Cameras at the front entrance, motion lighting, and a partnership with a local patrol group. Except that's not how Karen pitched it. Karen Matthews, HOA president for 6 years straight, always had a flair for drama. She stood at the front of the community center with her manicure claws gripping the podium, her voice rising with each sentence. We must be vigilant. There have been reports. Reports of what? No one knew. She mentioned a suspicious van, a missing package, and something about a raccoon getting into a trash can. By the end of the meeting, she'd somehow gotten a yes vote from a half-empty room of tired parents and retired folks. And with that, the HOA was given full discretionary authority to install cameras wherever they deemed necessary. Apparently, necessary now included my backyard. I walked back to the house, pulled out my file drawer, and laid out the plat map. I knew every corner of my property, down to the inch. That tree, firmly on my side of the boundary. More than that, I'd had issues with Karen and her pet board members before. The time she threatened to fine me $100 per day because my mailbox wasn't neutral beige. The time she claimed my backyard shed was too industrial looking, even though I built it 5 feet behind the fence line. Fully compliant. And now, surveillance. I circled the tree in red ink. They had no right. The next morning, I walked to the HOA clubhouse just after 9 a.m. Karen was already there, sipping coffee from her world's best president mug. Her bleach blonde hair was aggressively curled, and her outfit was HOA Karen chic. Pastel blazer, iron slacks, and a smug smirk. "Jack," she said, not looking up from her laptop, "what can we help you with this morning?" I slid the photo across the desk. Karen squinted, then smiled. "Ah, that's Camera Unit 6. It's part of our new initiative. You were at the meeting, remember? That's on my property." "No, it's on the perimeter," she said quickly. "In the green belt." "No," I said, my voice steady. "I own that tree. It's 5 feet into my property. I've got the deed and the survey to prove it." Karen's smile didn't waver. "Well, if there's a discrepancy, you're welcome to file a dispute. But I wouldn't recommend tampering with HOA equipment. That would be a serious violation." A pause. "Is that a threat?" I asked. Karen blinked innocently. "Of course not. Just letting you know the consequences." I stared at her. She stared back. Then I turned and walked out without saying another word. That afternoon, I ordered 3 things online. A 140 decibel air horn system with motion sensors, a set of weather-resistant solar panels, a smile, you're being watched yard sign, with a cartoon chicken holding binoculars. If the HOA wanted to play dirty, so be it. They had no idea who they were dealing with. This wasn't over. The next morning, I woke up to a new HOA email in my inbox. Subject: Reminder, surveillance program in effect. Dear residents, as a reminder, the HOA has implemented a monitored camera initiative for the safety and security of the community. Tampering with equipment will result in fines or further action. We thank you for your cooperation. Karen Matthews, HOA President. It didn't name me, but I knew the message was aimed directly at my skull. I took a long sip of coffee, smiled at the email, and hit forward. Destination: Hank Langley, Vietnam veteran, 3-time Purple Heart recipient, and self-declared HOA menace. Hank lived 3 houses down in a red brick ranch with an American flag in the yard and a no trespassing sign that probably dated back to the Cold War. He opened the door wearing camo pajama pants and a sleeveless shirt that read, "I fought for freedom, not HOA fees." "Morning, Jack," he grinned. "Karen breathing down your neck again?" Worse, she installed a camera in my tree. Hank didn't blink. "It begins." Over black coffee and stale oatmeal cookies, I laid out the situation: the camera, the bluff, the air horn plan. Hank listened, arms crossed, nodding slowly. "You need backup, and your goanna wants to talk to Louisa." "Louisa? The flower lady?" Hank snorted. "She's not just a gardener. She's a retired land use attorney. She sued her last HOA for $20,000 after they tried to tell her she couldn't have marigolds in the front yard." I stared at him. "Are you serious?" He leaned in. "She once quoted zoning code from memory and made a grown HOA board member cry." "Cry, Jack." Louisa's house smelled like lavender and retribution. Her entire front yard was a jungle of blossoms, perfectly trimmed hedges, and a winding cobblestone path that had once made Karen issue an HOA citation for unapproved paving. She'd framed the citation and hung it above her mantel. "So," she said, "you've got cameras on your land?" I nodded. She waved her hand, beckoning me into her home office. It was a war room. Maps, old HOA printouts, zoning files, and enough sticky notes to choke a library. "I've been documenting their violations for 5 years, she said calmly, opening a filing cabinet. "Karen's rewritten the bylaws illegally twice. She never holds required votes. She's funneled budget into unapproved projects, like that stupid dog sculpture at the entrance." I raised an eyebrow. "I thought that was community art." Louisa smirked. "It cost $10,000, and it's modeled after Karen's purebred Labradoodle, Princess." By noon, our resistance had grown. Hank, for surveillance tech and old-school intimidation. Louisa, for legal firepower and documentation. Me, for property rights, air horns, and the righteous fire of vengeance. We called ourselves a coalition, which Hank insisted was too boring, so we nicknamed it KRN, keeping America's rights effectively non-negotiable. By evening, we had our first strategic meeting on Louisa's back patio, sipping sun tea and passing around blueprints for my air horn system. "I've got an old foghorn from my Navy cousin's boat," Hank said. "We mount that baby on a 20-foot pole and hook it to motion sensors. It'll shake Karen out of her spray tan." Just as we were wrapping up, a voice called out from the fence, "Hey, is this a Down with Karen club?" It was Kaylee, the 16-year-old daughter of one of the neighbors. She wore a flannel shirt, black leggings, and a phone holster like a modern-day gunslinger. "I've been filming HOA meetings and uploading them to TikTok," she said, climbing up onto Louisa's patio bench like it was a witness stand. "One of them just hit 200,000 views. People are mad." She held up her phone, showing a clip of Karen yelling at a kid for sidewalk chalk. Kaylee smirked. "I'm in." That night, I heard a noise at the edge of my yard. I peeked out the window. Karen and 2 HOA board members, Doug and Sandy, were standing near the tree, flashlights in hand, whispering. Then I saw them zip tie another camera to my barn's gutter. On my land. I hit record on my phone and smiled. Louise's dining table was covered in paperwork. No candles, no flowers, just stacks of HOA records, bylaw printouts, old newsletters, and Karen's smug face printed out and taped to a dartboard. She's rewriting bylaws without a vote. That's a big no-no, Louisa said, flipping through a dusty 3-ring binder labeled HOA, 2017 to 2022. I sat back in the chair, still buzzing from the footage I got the night before, Karen and her 2 cronies trespassing to add another camera to my barn. Not only was it illegal surveillance, it was also bold, desperate, and arrogant, the trifecta of Karen-ness. Hank had just walked in with a gas station burrito and a spiral notebook labeled Stuff the HOA Can't Do, But Does Anyway. Chapter 1, he said, taking a loud bite. Karen's kingdom is built on nobody checking the rule book. Louisa pointed to a packet of papers and dropped the biggest bomb of the night. This, she said, is what I call the Karen Doctrine. She pulled out a single-page bylaw amendment with one sentence highlighted. The board may, at its discretion, enact temporary policies in the event of emergent or unusual community circumstances, without a resident vote. Emergent circumstances? I asked. Louisa nodded. That's how she passed the surveillance initiative. She declared that a package theft constituted an emergency. She passed surveillance laws because someone lost an Amazon box? I asked. Oh, no, Kaylee chimed in from the couch. That was my brother's box. It was cat food. He found it 2 hours later behind the bushes. The wind blew it. We sat in silence for a beat. She built a surveillance state over. Purina, I muttered. Kaylee had also brought something else. A flash drive. I accessed the public HOA budget archive. It's all on their website if you know how to dig. Louisa raised an eyebrow. That sounds illegal. It's public info, Kaylee said quickly. They just suck at hiding links. She clicked open the files. Line by line, the numbers unfolded. $2,300 for perimeter updates, $4,000 for security software licensing, $6,700 for communications. Wait, that's weird, Louisa whispered. This same amount appears on 3 separate line items. See that? Look, copy-paste job. She's duplicating expenses. I leaned in. You think she's embezzling? Louisa nodded. I think she's paying a shell company. Hank, still chewing on his second burrito, pulled out his phone and Googled the business listed on the budget. Green Star Community Technologies, LLC. Website? Basic. Phone number? A burner. Address? A P.O. box in another county. These stinks, he muttered. Louisa nodded. Karen isn't just power tripping. She's profiting off the HOA's fearmongering. She creates a problem, then uses HOA money to solve it. Kaylee leaned in, eyes wide. And what if we expose it? We don't just expose it, I said slowly. We weaponize it. The air horn system was only step 1 now. Originally, it was just my petty revenge for surveillance. But now, it was going to be a distraction, a statement, a declaration of war. Louisa would file the legal challenge to remove the cameras. Hank would rig up the horn system with upgrades. Kaylee would document everything, feeding it to her rapidly growing TikTok account at 8 Nightmares. We even set a date. Operation, code Red Horn Blast. 1 week from that night. Of course, Karen wouldn't sit idle. 3 days later, a neighborhood-wide letter went out. Subject, upcoming HOA surveillance enhancement. Dear residents, due to increased concern over unruly behavior and hostile activities near the Greenbelt, the HOA will be upgrading surveillance to include noise monitors, facial recognition, and automated motion alerts. For the safety of our children. Warmly, Kara Matthews, HOA President and Community Steward. She's trying to predict us. I muttered. She knows we're planning something. Well then, Hank said, cracking his knuckles, it's time to give her something to fear. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But honestly, ours came with 140 decibels of sound, a Navy-grade foghorn, and a sensor system that could spot a squirrel blinking at 30 feet. It was 11:46 p.m. when Hank, Louisa, and I crept into my backyard under the glow of a waxing moon. We wore black hoodies and gardening gloves like some HOA heist crew. Kaylee live-streamed the whole thing on a locked private feed she titled, Operation Air Karen. "This feels very Ocean's 11, she whispered. "You're 16, Louisa muttered. "And I'm the tech lead," Kaylee grinned. We mounted the air horn onto a 20-foot pole behind the barn, disguised as a weather vane. A motion sensor was attached just under the horn, aimed squarely at the line where Karen's illegal camera stood. The best part? We built it on a circuit with a delayed trip system. It wouldn't fire instantly. No. It would wait 3 seconds after movement was detected, just long enough to catch a face turning toward it in confusion. And then, the next morning at exactly 6:58 a.m., Doug, the HOA secretary and part-time birdwatcher, walked behind my barn with a coffee thermos and a clipboard. He approached the tree. He bent down to adjust the camera wire. Motion detected. 3, 2, 1, honk. The sound exploded like a freight train hitting a fog bank. Crows fled from trees. Dogs barked up and down the block. Somewhere, a car alarm went off. Doug screamed, fell backward into bushes, and dropped his thermos, spilling hot coffee onto his khakis. Kaylee caught the whole thing on camera. So, by noon, I had a knock at the door. Karen stood there in a designer tracksuit and oversized sunglasses, flanked by Doug, now sporting a Band-Aid and a 1,000-yard stare, and Sandy, who looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. "Mr. Turner," Karen said through gritted teeth, "we received several noise complaints from this residence." "I didn't hear anything," I replied innocently. "Must be the wind. Your neighbors say there's a device in your yard." "On my property?" Doug flinched. Sandy glanced away. Karen's jaw tightened. "You're disrupting the peace." I stepped out onto the porch and held up a printout. It was the HOA bylaw about noise. No disruptive sound above 80 decibels shall be made between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. I smiled. It went off at 6:58 a.m. Legally, it's just a rooster with a louder voice. That video of Doug's horn panic? 1.4 million views in 24 hours. At HOA Nightmares blew up. Comments poured in. "This man is a hero." Karen had it coming. "Where can I buy one of those horns?" Kaylee started a merch line. Louisa began getting calls from other residents asking if they could also challenge the HOA. One even slipped a note under my door. "Bless you, Hornman. Lot 42-inch. 2 days later, an emergency HOA meeting was called. Karen stormed into the community center like a firestorm in yoga pants. The room was packed, more than I'd ever seen. People who'd never shown up before were now here with popcorn and lawn chairs. She tried to speak. Someone yelled, "Play the horn again!" Laughter erupted. Karen slammed her clipboard on the table and screeched, "I will not be mocked." Kaylee, live on TikTok. "Too late, babe." Just before the meeting adjourned, Louisa stood up. "I'd like to introduce a motion," she said loudly, holding up a stapled packet. "A formal request for review of surveillance legality, financial transparency, and misuse of HOA funds, signed by 37 homeowners." The room gasped. Karen froze. Louisa added with a smile, "That's more than 60% of the voting body, which means you're out, Karen." By Thursday, the neighborhood had changed. The HOA, once feared, had become a punchline. People walked their dogs past Karen's house with horn ringtones set on full volume. Someone even printed T-shirts that said, "I survived the great honking." But the storm hadn't passed. No, Karen was regrouping, and we were ready for her next move. Louisa was a machine. She had filed an official request with the county to audit the HOA's finances. She collected physical signatures from nearly 70% of the homeowners. But Karen wasn't going down quietly. She tried a classic Karen play, delay and deflect. She sent out an email to the neighborhood claiming the vote was invalid due to improper formatting. Louisa's response? A letter personally addressed to the county records office and a CC to the neighborhood, explaining, in cold legalese, exactly how Karen's actions violated multiple transparency laws. HOA procedural rules, and one specific clause from her own rewritten bylaws. Karen had written her own downfall into the rulebook. Louisa just turned the page. 2 days later, I woke up to new signs posted around the neighborhood. Attention! HOA in crisis. Certain individuals were engaging in illegal sabotage, public slander, and destructive behavior. The signs were signed, K. Matthews, President. She even tacked one to my mailbox. So I did what any red-blooded, freedom-loving neighbor would do. I replaced it with a laminated printout of Doug getting blasted by the horn. Word spread fast. The next emergency meeting wasn't held in the community center. It was in my barn. We cleaned it out, set up plastic folding chairs, borrowed a projector from Hank's cousin, and served lemonade in little red cups. The whole neighborhood showed up. Even old Mr. Carruthers, who hadn't left his porch in 5 years, rolled up in a rascal scooter. Karen tried to shut it down, claiming it wasn't sanctioned. Louisa stood up with a clipboard and read aloud the HOA clause on emergency member meetings, written in 2009 by none other than Karen herself. A meeting may be called by a 51% majority of homeowners in response to board mismanagement. Louisa closed the binder. 67% signed. We're here. You're done. Hank, wearing a sheriff star sticker for dramatic flair, rolled out the projector and clicked through the slides. Kaylee stood beside him, narrating. Slide 1, Karen Shell Company, Green Star Technologies. Slide 2, repeating expense amounts. Slide 3, public tax record. Green Star's listed owner, Karen's cousin. The crowd gasped like a live studio audience. Karen turned red, then pale, then red again. You're all delusional, she screamed. This is my neighborhood. Someone in the back shouted, Not anymore, lady. Louisa raised her hand. We motioned to dissolve the current HOA board and elect interim members until proper elections are held. A sea of hands rose into the air. Karen stood in the center aisle, fists clenched. You people think you've won? This community needs order. Without me, it'll fall apart. Doug finally spoke. Quietly. No, Karen. Without you, maybe it'll finally breathe. She turned on him like a thunderstorm. You coward. But it was too late. People were already clapping. And from the shadows of the barn rafters, a motion sensor tripped. 3, 2, 1. Karen screamed. The barn echoed like a stadium. It was poetic. Karen resigned that night. She didn't even take down the signs. Doug and Sandy both formally stepped down with her. A temporary board was formed, with Louisa elected president. Hank became head of community safety. Kaylee was made unofficial tech consultant. As for me, I was named the honorary noise control officer. For the first time in months, the neighborhood felt normal. The air horn had been retired temporarily. The cameras came down one by one. The emails from Kay Matthews vanished like bad dreams. Kids rode bikes without monitoring zones. Doug started smiling again. And my chickens laid more eggs than usual, probably relieved the tension had eased. But peace, as it turns out, is fragile. And mine ended at exactly 3:12 a.m. on a Thursday. It started with a light, small, silent, hovering over the chicken coop. At first, I thought it was a firefly. Then the red LED blinked. Not organic, not random, deliberate. I grabbed my flashlight and ran out barefoot in boxers, waving it like a madman. The drone zipped upward, high enough that I couldn't track it, then vanished toward the east side of the neighborhood. Next morning, I found the coop door unlatched, something I never forget to secure. None of the chickens were harmed, but they were restless. One was missing feathers, and one of the solar panels I'd rigged up to power their heater had a fresh crack. Someone was watching. Karen's gone, Louisa said the next morning, sipping coffee and scanning satellite images on her tablet. But her influence might not be. She didn't work alone, Kaylee chimed in. She had suppliers, installers, tech people. Some of those folks got paid too well to quit just because Karen lost her crown. Hank walked in holding a crumpled flyer he found taped to the community mailboxes. Concerned citizens of Oak Valley, keeping our community safe from rogue activity. A new logo, no names, no contact info, just a symbol, an eye surrounded by laurel branches. We called it the Shadow Board, a rogue group of residents still loyal to Karen, or just too power-drunk to let go. They worked in whispers, spreading rumors, posting surveillance messages, and possibly flying that drone. Kaylee hacked into the Wi-Fi pings in the area and found a network name that hadn't been there 2 weeks ago. Ovia Sentinel-Net. She looked at me. They set up a private surveillance mesh. Hank cracked his knuckles. Time to bring the horn back. I nodded. Not yet. First, we find the nest. We trace the drone to Lot 19, a rental home supposedly vacant. No lawn chairs, no lights. But every Thursday night, Kaylee's thermal scanner showed activity in the attic window. Louisa got us a copy of the property records. Owned by a shell company, filed under a trust, registered to Green Star Urban Services, LLC. Another cousin? Karen's not gone, I said slowly. She's just gone underground. We didn't want a war, but we weren't going to sit still while someone built a secret surveillance bunker next to my coop. So we did the only reasonable thing. We built a second horn. This one, motion-activated and drone-sensitive. Using a hacked GPS tether and Kaylee's custom alert system, it only triggered when an unregistered signal crossed a certain height over the barn. First test flight? Success. The horn fired. The drone dropped like a rock. It landed 2 feet from the coop, intact but disabled, and taped to its side, a note, just one word. Traitor. The drone crash wasn't the end. It was the beginning of round 2. Louisa got a tip from an anonymous neighbor. Lot 19 would be occupied Thursday night. No lights, no noise, just a line of SUVs parked nearby. We slipped into the side fence, Kaylee with her phone camera, Hank carrying a toolbox that totally wasn't just props for his dramatic flair. Upstairs, behind a plastic sheet and a giant HOA map. Curran, hair slicked back. New look, new voice, new name, Casey Martin. Same smug attitude. She was pitching a new version of the HOA, a privatized one, unregulated by county oversight, she said, funded by donations. She even had a constitution rewrite. Buried inside, a clause granting emergency powers to the founder. Classic Karen. Kaylee streamed it live. The moment Karen said, "We'll surveil every lot until the fear dies down." Our TikTok feed lit up with thousands of viewers. Karen realized it just as Hank opened the window and blasted the air horn from outside. Her face? Pure shock. Karen's comeback? Crushed in 12 hours. Kaylee's stream hit 2 million views overnight. Reddit called her HOA Voldemort. Twitter/X? Hashtag Karen Reborn was trending by morning. News crews camped outside Lot 19 by noon. Karen tried to deny it. It was a reenactment, she told one reporter. Too late. The whole world saw her planning to turn our neighborhood into a personal dictatorship. Louisa handed over the footage to county authorities. Karen's shell company was subpoenaed. The lot was seized under zoning violations. Karen disappeared again. This time, no farewell letter. No threats. Just a for sale sign hammered into grass at 6 a.m. By 7, it was covered in chicken feathers and duct-taped horns. 2 weeks passed. No signs. No meetings. No drones. The coop was calm. The chickens? Thriving. Even laid a double yoke the morning after Karen vanished. Like they knew. We took down the backup horn. Retired it into the barn rafters like a battle flag. Kaylee printed a 3D plaque that read, "The Great Honkening, never forget." Doug, now the friendliest neighbor on the block, came by with cookies. "Didn't think I'd say this," he chuckled, "but it's nice not waking up in a Cold War." Louisa and the new board rewrote the bylaws. No surveillance without written consent. No spending without public vote. No one named Karen can serve without a full psychological evaluation. Okay, maybe not the last one, but we joked about it. On a quiet Sunday, we hosted a block party in my yard. Basketball, barbecue, kids chasing chickens. The old air horn turned into a lemonade stand bell. Kaylee charged 50 cents for freedom sips. As the sun dipped low, someone asked if I missed the drama. Nah, I said, smiling, but I do miss that honk. We laughed, and from the barn, like fate had a sense of humor. HHKKK. The wind tripped the sensor. Perfect.